For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, we are live and amplified. So let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome, everybody, to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Townsend. How's it going today?
It is going fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Just trying to stay warm.
That's right. I hear that.
Living in the South and dealing with this cold weather, it is not fun. And yeah, I'm sure you can.
We sound like wimps, though. We're in the South. People in the North are like, "Oh, you're such wimps." But it is like 19 degrees.
I've stopped having that argument with people anymore because it's like, look, I haven't lived in Chicago in like 12 years. I'm over it. You know, I moved to the South for a reason. Ever since I left school, I've lived in Florida. I've lived in New Mexico. I've lived in Texas. That's about it. And it's never really that bad. So, but I don't know, this year, it's cold.
It's been chilly for sure.
So, but first off, I want to thank you so much for jumping on here and chatting with me a little bit. I'm really excited. I know we got a kind of a lot to go through and a lot to unpack. And then you got some music that's coming out on Friday. It is Friday, but next Friday. And then we'll talk about your EP and all that stuff. And so I'm really excited to jump into it. Before we get to the new music and all your musical stuff, let's give you an opportunity to kind of introduce yourself. What's your background? What's your origin story into music? Stuff of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, my name is Townsend. I'm a singer, songwriter, born and raised in Arkansas. Right now I'm in the central Arkansas area, but I frequent Nashville and those places quite a bit. I'm hoping to get back into traveling. Obviously, things have been held back a little bit the last couple of years, but I'm hoping, like we just talked about, 2022, we'll be able to travel a little bit more. So I'm making plans to do that. As far as music, honest to goodness, I feel like music's been part of my life forever. I don't remember really ever not being into music or not playing music. And my first instrument was really the drums. And so you'll see my drum set back there. I love banging on the drums. I used to be in a punk rock band in junior high and high school. Got to college, and that's kind of where I picked up the guitar, and some friends encouraged me to start singing for crowds, and it just got bigger and bigger. So I headed a rock band in college, and it was amazing, the most fun I've ever had. And if you fast forward a little bit, we played 8 or 9 years in that band, and, like acoustic with the drummer, things like that. And my drummer and best bud ended up passing away in 2016. So I completely stepped away from music. I decided it used to bring me joy, and now it just brought me a lot of grief and heartache. So I hung it up. And then I decided one day, I wrote this song called Show Me Home. And in 2018, had a CD release party, wrote this album about just finding myself again, and kind of a memoir for my drummer and my buddy, and been going nonstop since then. So it's been an amazing ride. And this go at music's almost a little bit different. It's almost more like passion filled. Like I have a why of why I do it this time. The first time I loved it, don't get me wrong, but this time it's like I know how quickly it can disappear. So it means a lot more this time.
Absolutely. There's a lot of stuff I can relate to, but we'll get to it in due time. Let's take a step back. You're originally from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and you originally started singing and pursuing music when you were young in Pine Bluff. And you said in high school you played
the drums
primarily.
Yeah.
Do you remember who introduced you to the drums, or how did you get introduced to drums?
Yeah. So my brother was a drummer. He played for a band. And so he had his drum set up, and I was the younger sister. I wasn't allowed to touch them, just like the older brother. So that just made me want to touch them more, So them being like the no, all I could think was like, I got to sneak into that room and I got to play them better than he does. No, so honestly, I wasn't allowed to touch him, but I touched him every single day. And he ended up getting over it and was like, yeah, whatever, as long as I respected the drum set. But yeah, that's kind of what started it. Was just I wasn't allowed to touch him, and that made me want to touch him more.
Is it kind of like that scene from Step Brothers?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. I don't know.
Yeah.
While you were describing that, I was just like, I was replaying that entire scene of Step Brothers in my head.
Pretty much exactly like that. Yes, always.
Awesome. And you had all kinds of influences, musically speaking, as you started pursuing music. Who were some of your musical influences that you were listening to during this time that you were getting ready to, or wanting to start learning the drums and all that stuff?
Oh yeah, I loved hard rock. So that was the era where like emo music was really popular. So the singer for that band loved Blink-182. So we heard those songs all the time. I loved personally bands like Under Oath and Blindside and a little bit of harder rock. I liked them a lot. And so they really influenced, oddly enough, because you wouldn't imagine that with my style now, but I love rock music. Not as far as like death rock or screamo. I like a little bit of that, but if you tone it back just a bit. So yeah, bands like Under Oath or Anne Berlin is a great one.
Gotcha. And kind of moving forward to your band in high school, how did that band kind of come together? Was it something that you'd sought out, or?
It kind of just happened that way. You know, you see the same friends over and over because you go to school together from like kindergarten to senior year. And I had some guy friends that played guitar. They knew I had a drum set. I was one of the only kids that had one. And so we'd come hang out at my house after school and we'd jam. You know, our moms would drop us off. And I vividly remember going to the kitchen and like devouring the snacks in my cabinets and just like eating all of them, like the Little Debbies, and trying to think of a cool band name. And it was so ridiculous, but it was some of the best times I ever had. So not searching it out, it just kind of fell into place. And it was some of the best times. Worst music ever, but fantastic time.
I honestly like I've been getting into like the Twitch streaming and watching a lot of the musicians on Twitch, and they'll go back and play some of the music that they recorded. Like if they're in their late 20s, early 30s, and they've been doing music for a while, they'll go back to the stuff that they recorded as kids or as teenagers in like their early band projects.
I love
and
it.
Just kind of roast themselves.
Yeah.
It's really interesting and funny. And
yeah. Man, I love it, playing those CDs and the CDs, aging myself, but I love the physical record, like the CD that you pop in your car. Oh, I still love putting those in there, like Fall Out Boy and such.
I just got a new car and I'm so mad because there's not a CD player in it.
I have heard a lot of the new ones don't have them. Oh, I hate that so much.
I had a car and I was like dead set against ever getting a new one until like I absolutely had to, because it had a CD player. It was perfect. And then my car just died on me one day and I couldn't get it to start. And the repair shop was like, nope. And now I got this thing and it's like, there's not even a CD player in this.
Oh, I dread that day that I have to make that upgrade.
I mean, I'm sure you could get a CD player, but at what point is it worth it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So. They don't even really sell them anymore. They're hard to come by.
Yeah. And if need be, you could get the blue, like if you really wanted to, you can make it work, but
yeah,
it is what it is.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. So then after high school, you went to college, and this is kind of a fun story. So about how you got discovered in your sorority, right? Kind of explain the college story, because I don't want to bury the lead or anything.
Absolutely. So yeah. So I went to college, you're 17, 18 years old. I played guitar and I sang, but nobody really knew. I didn't sing for anybody. Some of my friends heard me sing and they're like, okay, we have to enter you into the sorority pageant that they do every year. And they get some of the new members and you go against all these other sorority girls. It's a huge event. I mean, there are thousands of people there. And so I was up I'm not a huge pageanty girl. I did used to have long hair and things like that. But so I did my round. So you do a formal round, you do a swimsuit round, all those things. And then it came to talent. Well, all the other girls, did the baton twirling or the ballerina dances. And I came out with my acoustic guitar. I swear I blacked out. I don't remember any of it. I was so nervous. But here I am on the front of the stage, first time ever. Spotlight comes on, and I play my acoustic guitar and I play a medley of rap songs. And everybody's like, what the? So it definitely turned some heads. But yeah, that's kind of where it all started. So people loved it. They thought it was awesome and creative, if anything. So I started getting hired for like fraternity and sorority gigs, just playing like rap medleys and things like that. So that's kind of where that got started.
Nice. And you listened to rap music all throughout your childhood, right? That was another kind of, no? Yeah.
Yeah. I love all music. I think it's all great. And of course, we all know like the rap music that is, I don't know, the ones you ride around in high school and you think you have a bass and it's awesome and it sounds terrible.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I remember those days.
Your doors are rattling and it sounds terrible, but we all tried to be that kid.
Unfortunately, that was me about 6 months ago in the car that died. And my sound engineer, Jeff, yells at me every time because I would go to the preset that just has the heaviest bass.
Yes.
And you can hear the speakers just rattling. And he's like, dude, what are you doing? This sucks. Shut it off. And I'm like, leave me alone. I enjoy it. And he's like, So
we all did that. So yes, rap's never been my most enjoyable genre, but of course, I have a lot of respect for it for sure.
Do you remember what songs you combined in your medley for the performance?
Oh gosh, they would have been songs that would have been popular for like 17-year-old sorority girls at that time. So it'd have been, one was Riding Dirty. I know that one. Lollipop, I think, was one.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I know those two stick out. I can't remember the other ones. That's a good question. I should totally try to find a video of it.
That was gonna be my next question. Is there a video of this somewhere?
I'm sure I think I did Rihanna, Under My Umbrella.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's funny. Oh, somebody froze. I hope it's not me. Oh, there you go. We're back.
Yep, we're good.
All right. Cool. So you had Rihanna's Umbrella.
Yep, Under My Umbrella. So I think those are the only ones I remember right now, but that's a good question. I'm going to test myself, see if I can remember them. There were probably, 6 to 10 of them. You just do them really quick, like back to back.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. That's awesome. I have a lot of respect for people that can put medleys together and just kind of bend songs. And, I've seen musicians do like classic rock medleys, like instead of doing like covers, they do medleys, which is really cool and interesting. So
yeah, that's pretty much how I made my money for college, was just getting paid for these parties, putting medleys together like last minute. I'm like, I like this song, I'll put them in the same key, and that's how I did it.
Nice. That's awesome. So then during college, you met your good friend, or you met a good friend just kind of randomly through.
Yeah, that was kind of a crazy story too. Okay. Yeah. So I played these sorority and fraternity events. And I got a message on Facebook one night and it was like, hey, love your stuff. Heard you play around. I play drums. If you're ever interested, let's start a band. And I was like, who is this? And so, you Facebook creep on him. So I'm looking through his pictures and I'm like, yeah, we don't have any mutual friends. I don't know who you are. I was like, yeah, stranger danger. So I put it on the back burner and I was like, yeah, absolutely not. And then I went back to it later that night and was like, if I die, like going to play music, is that the worst thing that could happen? And so I lost lack of judgment. And it was like the middle of the night, like, 11, 12 at night. And I told my roommate, I vividly remember being like, okay, well, I'm going to take a chance. And if I don't come home in like an hour or two, maybe call the cops because I've gone missing. And they were like, what? So I show up to this house, I pull up to the address, and it's this big, like rickety white house But when I pull in, it's kind of like your car. I can hear the bass and the music just like wailing from this old house. And we ended up like an instant connection. He opened the door. He had a ton of guy friends there. And it was basically just bachelors playing music. They had a whole setup with music. Yeah, it was a ton of fun. So we started a band pretty much right then and there and played for 8 or 9 years after that.
Nice. And what kind of music were you playing at that point? Were you still doing the hip hop medley, or were you more punk rock? Where were you kind of?
No, it wasn't really punk rock. It was more, I would say, on the lines of like alternative rock or even just rock. Yeah, it was much harder than punk rock, I would say.
Okay. Gotcha. And so there you played together for, you said 9 years. Yeah. But then I'm trying to be careful how I lead into things because I don't want to tell the entire story, but go ahead and kind of finish that story.
Yeah, so the band got together. We had some amazing players. We played nonstop, open for some huge names, and it got to the point where we were like, okay, do we want to do this or do we want to continue with like grad school? What do we want to do? And I remember having that conversation. And so, the bass player got married, the guitar player moved to medical school out of state. And so we were just like, man, I guess the drummer and we still wanted to do music, but still do school. And so we did a lot of acoustic shows together. So he and I kept it going. So we played music in the longest. Everybody else kind of broke apart. Mm-hmm. And then in 2016, he ended up getting in a car wreck and passing away totally unexpectedly. And when you're that young, it's, gosh, I don't know that it's easier or harder no matter what age you are. But at that age, you're like invincible and you don't know how to grieve well. Nobody really has taught you that. And you've not experienced loss at that level yet. Mm-hmm. And so the best way to put it was I felt totally lost because I felt like my friends hadn't experienced that yet. So they couldn't understand me. My family couldn't really understand me because they didn't even want to talk about it because it hurt them too. Mm-hmm. It was just a really weird time, really dark. And so I spent a lot of time just completely hanging up music, not playing at all because I couldn't play a single show by myself. I didn't want to. It terrified me. I literally remember paying him to be on the stage and he'd be like, there's not even a mic or anything. I was like, literally just sit in a chair and pretend you're singing. Like, I don't care, but like, don't leave me up here by myself. Mm-hmm. And so I called him my security blanket. Like, he just made me feel more secure. And so, that's kind of how I hung up music in 2016.
Gotcha. And we'll talk about this now, and then we'll kind of get into your music because one of the things that I really admire is your openness to talk about mental health in music and just entertain. Honestly, all of entertainment needs to be a bit more open about mental health. And the loss of your friend Terrence, right? That's
correct.
The loss of Terrence seems like it was the jumping off point of you kind of coming to terms with mental health and its importance. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It really, gosh, during that time I had to teach myself how to like mold into a new norm. I just feel like I totally lost myself, who I was. Mm-hmm. Like I said, at that young of an age, you're invincible. And then to have something that big, like that catalyst moment. And when I took responsibility for it, I guess is the best way to put it, it really just lit a passion underneath me. And like I said, I wrote that song and it kind of started the healing journey for me. Mm-hmm. And it showed me like how dark and alone I really was and how anxiety and depression, those things really do sneak up on you no matter how happy you are. Cause I feel like I'm a very happy-go-lucky person. Mm-hmm. I'm always in a good mood. I'm always the funny one or whatever. And so people didn't feel like they needed to check on me. Mm-hmm. And so I made a pact to myself that I didn't want anyone to feel the way I felt that year because I felt completely alone. And so, I started a project called You're Not Alone, which started with live streams, interviews, and now it's turned into a podcast and a YouTube channel. So it's been really cool.
Awesome. I do want to just kind of connect on this a little bit. Yeah. I just recently kind of went through something that you went through my mother passed away this past July. And I went through, I'm not going to say a dark phase because I don't really consider it a dark moment, but I just started questioning the point of everything.
Yeah.
And I knew I had like a lot of responsibilities that I still had to do. I had come back here because my parents live in South Florida. And so I was down there while she was dealing with cancer. So I was there while she was going through her chemo and all that stuff. And then she passed away. And when I got back here, it was one of those deals where it's like, I still got my dad, I still got my sister, and I still got my brother-in-law, and they're here for me, but I'm out here.
Yeah.
And what's the point of all this? And I just started questioning a lot of stuff. And so I kind of took a break from the podcast for a while. I did a couple here and there, but like November, I just cold turkey quit. And I contemplated even coming back to do them at all. Like I was like, I'm good. And then I saw my schedule. I had one booked for January 1st. It was somebody that I knew really well. We've had done a few different podcasts. And I was like, well, I'll do that one. And then I'll probably that'll be it. And I'll just kind of figure out what's next for me. And in a similar situation, sat down, did the interview and was like, holy crap, this is so much fun. And then I booked the next one. And then before I knew it, here I'm sitting like 21 days later, like, all right, we're not going to give this up. So,
Well, that's awesome. I hate to hear that, but yeah, it's really cool. The stories, I don't know if you've checked out the podcast, but the stories that I hear, it's such an honor that one, they trust me enough to share their story. Mm-hmm. Two, they're brave enough to share their story. And three, like I get to use my platform to do that. It's really cool. The community we've built has been just amazing. So cool.
Yeah, I listened to about 5 minutes of the most recent one that released, is it the 17th, I think, right? Somewhere in there.
Yeah, probably Taking Hope to the Streets, I think, with Tommy Norman. That's a good one.
I'll continue to listen because I sit here and I work all day and I need stuff to listen to. So
yeah,
I will continue to listen. But no, that's really cool. And I really appreciate you that you, take time to, and that's like a very important point in your life, dealing with mental health in the music business. And especially early on during the pandemic, that was one thing that I was really trying to push because I knew how it was affecting me. And it's like, I'm not even that creative of a person. Just imagine all these people that are super creative and super social and like need to be out there. It's like, yeah, this needs to be a topic of conversation. So
yeah, it's definitely a whirlwind for musicians. It cut our whole world off completely. So that was a weird time for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're back now. You're playing music full time. You've been back playing full time since 2018, right?
Yep. At the very end, in November or September, actually, I had my sold out release CD party. It was kind of a memoir in honor of him, and his family flew in. It was the most amazing, perfect start. And so from then I've been booked and playing nonstop.
Nice. And you've been going back and forth to Nashville and doing all that, or had you been going back like before when you were doing your original?
Oh no. Yeah. When I was playing with him, we didn't have any money. So we were in college. We didn't have a dime between the two of us. And so our goal was to record a legit album. And I spent all the money I had to make this album in 2018. Mm-hmm. And so no, Nashville was definitely not on the radar at that time.
Gotcha. So you started releasing music, and we'll kind of fast forward to 2021. You've released a few different singles. You released an EP, a self-titled EP. Townsend, what was kind of the original idea for that EP as you were getting ready to record it and started working on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to go into this album and I really wanted to focus on the artistry of all of it. So I guess again, it kind of goes back to the CD. Like I wanted the artwork to be hand done. I wanted it to be by a local artist. I wanted the CD to be super simplistic. I wanted the music to be live and simple, but really good. I wanted the lyrics to be simple, but relatable. And so just focusing on the artistry of each and every song and making it the most relatable that I could. And it's kind of cool on that note, if you compare my two CDs, so like the Show Me Home CD and then the Townsend CD, a few years apart, they're so different.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool to listen to how much it's evolved. And so like how much Townsend has changed over the past 2-3 years. It's a really cool.
Awesome. I did, as I was listening to the EP, I did really appreciate the drawn back or the stripped back nature of the entire product and the entire process. Like the album cover is really simple.
Yeah.
And then the music's just, from my recollection, it's just you and your guitar, right?
And there's a whole band, but it's more like it's quite literally like a live recording, more of like an Americana field. It's not like, you've got grinding on the electric guitar, like it's none of that. It's just straightforward, but yeah.
Gotcha. And what went into the song selection process? Were these songs that you specifically wrote for this EP, or had you been writing and it was just like, oh, hey, these 5 songs work together?
Yeah, more so like that. So the time came where I was like, okay, I have these songs. I really like them. I want to do something with them. And so I decided to put them together on the EP. And it just so happens, like I said, if you compare them to the last CD, they're full of love and hope. It's just kind of cool. So yeah.
So talking about the your most recent EP, and then so they were 5 songs that you had already written, and they just kind of work together. How much did COVID affect everything, like the release of?
Yeah. Surprisingly enough, it didn't affect it too terribly much. If anything, it worked in my favor. It was kind of amazing. So, long story short, I had a Nashville audio engineer, huge name. He works with the best of the best in the country and the blues Americana industry. We got in touch and he was like, I like your stuff. I'd really like to work with you. And I was like, what? You've got the wrong person. So before he realized he had the wrong person, just kidding, I ran out to Nashville super quick. We met up. He was going to record these songs for me. We just started working together and we clicked really well. And he hit up a bunch of Nashville artists, which are internationally traveling and touring. But because of COVID, they were at home and they were like, yeah, sure, we'll hop on. And so it was some of the best musicians literally in the world got to hop on these records with me. So really it worked in my favor, but we still had to wear masks when we were gathered closely. But thankfully, when you record, you kind of spread out and have your own room. So we got to take them off when we were in our own little recording space, but it worked out in my favor, really.
Gotcha. I have a feeling a lot of musicians had situations like that work in their favor, where they reached out to somebody just in hopes of getting to work with them. And it's like, well, I'm here. Let's do it.
Literally. Yeah. Everybody was cooped up at home. So
yeah. And everybody's looking for something creative to sink their teeth into. And it's like,
and make a little dough.
Yeah, that too. Like they're trying to recoup their losses from the shows that they can't play and all that stuff.
Literally. So. Yeah.
So the album's been out now for almost 2 months.
Yeah. So it came out mid or late November. And so it's been out a couple of months.
How does it feel to have a new EP out?
It feels fantastic. The feedback's been amazing. I've gotten a lot of new opportunities from it, and just honestly getting to share something that I spent so much time and effort doing. It's like sharing your diary with the world. You're like just waiting to hear the feedback. And so when it's positive, it makes you feel so good.
Nice. And and did you release a music video for one of the singles on this?
We're actually in the works.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one downfall of COVID is it put a lot of digital companies way behind because you can't have too many people on scene. And so we do have a music video. It is finished, but they're way behind on editing. So it will be coming out for stay. Yeah.
Gotcha. I know you had done some like lyric videos and some music videos for some of your previous releases, and I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss something as I was kind of prepping, you know.
Yeah, you're right. There's one in the makes, and we're just waiting for the day it comes out.
Nice. And so kind of fast forwarding to new releases, you've got a cover song releasing on Friday.
Yeah, 1 week.
Which is kind of an interesting strategy. I've seen a lot of musicians doing this where they start doing covers. What was the thought process? Or first off, what's the name of the song?
It's called "You Broke Me First" by Tate McRae, which is a newer artist.
Okay. And why did you decide to release a cover song?
I don't know. It's something just kind of different for artists. I enjoy it because it shows a completely different feel. It's kind of like the rap medleys.
Mm-hmm.
Like it shows people, I don't know, it's hard. It shows them your creativity. So when I play live, I do a bunch of cover songs and I make them my own, and I get a ton of feedback on them. And so I want to record those and let people listen to them at home and be like, oh my gosh, I almost like that better than the original song. So it gives me a creative outlet. It gives me an opportunity to let people hear something a little bit familiar and more popular, but then be like, oh, no way, I kind of like that twist on it. So it gives me something fun to do, gives the listener something a little bit familiar to listen to, but I really like it. I actually have only done one cover song release before, and it was Mr. Brightside by the Killers. And I got a ton of feedback on it because I took, that song's like really upbeat and like punk rock. And I took it way back and made it more like a Billie Eilish song.
Okay.
And got a ton of good feedback on it. So I was like, yeah, okay, I want to do more of those. I like it.
Nice. And you're putting your own twist on this new release?
Yeah, this one's pretty laid back as well. So we've got some keys on it, some bass on it, a little bit of a guitar, and then just a voice. So it's pretty laid back as well. I'd say it almost has a Billie Eilish vibe as well.
Nice. And what's one thing you've learned through this entire process of, since you've only done one other cover song, what's something that you've learned through the process of recording and getting ready to release a cover song?
A cover song. Ooh. Gosh, when it comes down to it, it's a song that you have to enjoy. Otherwise, it's really hard to put your own twist on it. So I went between, do I pick a song I feel like people like the most, or do I pick a song I enjoy playing? And you always go with the one that you enjoy, because otherwise it's going to be more of a job and a hassle to do it. If you like it, it's just a fun project to work with. So I think something I learned was that, and it's a really fun project when you want it to be.
Nice. And do you have any ideas of turning this into a ongoing project of like singles that are covers and eventually releasing it as like an EP or something called?
Oh, that would be really cool. So the legal side of that is super complicated, and being an indie artist, I'm like, I don't know. I would love, it'd be really cool to make an EP that was all cover songs with like this acoustic vibe, creative side to it. But I don't know what that holds. But yes, I definitely want to do more and just pick songs of all genres and add my own vibe to it. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I've been really digging the Dave Grohl Bee Gees album that he did. It's just like, oh, that's really cool and interesting.
Yeah, he's got a whole set of lawyers though, so that's way easier.
Yeah, that is very true. Very true. Yeah. It's a lot easier to do stuff when you have a team of lawyers that'll just make it happen.
Whole team. My luck, I'd put a CD out and get sued the next day for the whole 10 pennies that I own.
Yeah. Thanks, streaming.
Thanks for nothing. Yeah. So I would love to do that. But yes, for sure, I'm going to be putting more covers out with my own just creativity on them. They're just so fun.
Nice. And so the new single drops Friday. What's kind of the plan after that? Are you going back to originals, working on more singles? What's kind of the thought after that?
That's a really good question. So I've actually already been chatting with my team and they're like, okay, when's the date for the next album? And I'm like, I just dropped that one. So it's constantly keeping up with the Joneses. So right now I've got a ton of focus on my You're Not Alone podcast. So I'm booking out for the whole year. I'm doing gigs. I'm also writing new material as often as I possibly can in hopes to do an album release. But in the meantime, before we get that recorded and mastered and all that, I'm really hoping to do a few more single releases as well.
That seems to be where music's heading right now anyways.
Yeah.
Is the singles, which, man, I don't know if I agree with it or if I disagree. Like, I feel like I flip-flop a lot because like with the emergence of Web 3.0 and NFTs and all that stuff, it's like that's like tailor-made for singles and kind of reverting back to the old days of like vinyl where you get one song per side.
Yes.
And that's kind of it.
Literally. It's like, yeah, literally. There are books and articles written nonstop about how music has gone into the singles. Like that's just where we are right now. It's just quick and easy to do for a lot of us indie artists. Like it's the fastest way because people want product immediately. And just like, I just spent all this time, effort, money on this EP. And they're already like, when's the next stuff coming out? So it's just nonstop. It's a way to keep people engaged. It's the easiest way to do it.
And it's one of those, like, here's my train of thought on that whole thing. And I mean, I've done a lot of these podcasts. So I've had, especially over the pandemic, I've had a lot of time to kind of cultivate a thought process behind this. Like singles are good during the pandemic because it's like, it keeps you out there. And especially if you went into the pandemic with like a full 12, 14 song, full length album that you were getting ready to release. Yeah. Just break it up. One song every 6 weeks. And then you've got enough releases for 60 weeks, 72 weeks, whatever it is. And that brings you almost to the end of last year. And then you just got to try and figure out what you do next. And it's one of those deals where it's just kind of like it works during COVID, but once you get back out there, you need that full length album because if you're playing shows and you're selling merch, singles aren't going to do nothing for you other than get people interested in the show. Whereas having that full length album, that's a good $10, $15. I don't know what CDs sell for anymore. Like,
yeah, nothing because people don't have them in their car anymore.
That's true.
But really, so literally it all goes back to people's attention span. Like we don't have one, excuse me. So you're constantly having to feed your audience. And so they don't want to wait 8 months on a whole album, which is super sad because we need time to rip these things out. And so just going as quick as you can, producing. And so that ends up being a lot of singles. But I agree. I love full projects thought out, like the artistry and all that. Yeah.
And each song is put in their specific place to tell a story.
Exactly.
Like there's still a lot of musicians out there that they put an album together with the intent of you listening from track 1 to track 15 and it tells a complete story. And I really enjoy that. And then of course you've got a lot of the modern day artists or a lot more artists that are doing I'm going to release 12 singles. They're all going to be top 100 Billboard hits. And then we're just going to throw it on a CD and say happy birthday.
Yep.
So I don't know.
That's exactly what's happening.
But then again, it makes me happy that my car doesn't have a CD player because now I can focus on my vinyl collection.
There you go. There you go.
Anytime I go to an independent show and the artist has a vinyl anything, I'm going to buy it because I know how expensive vinyl is.
Please do. Anything merch, man, I can't harp that enough for people. Like anything merch as an indie artist. So people that are independent, we don't have managers or, like the labels or anything. It comes out of our pocket. So a CD to us is like a fortune. So we have to sell it all to order new stuff. It's it's an endless cycle. So we have to have people buy our merch.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the best. I love going to live shows and just like seeing all the cool different merch. Like I went to a show once and there was a band selling cassette tapes.
Yeah. Those are coming back.
these aren't even good sound quality. Like, I get the gimmick of it, but these are like, at least listening on vinyl, it's like good sound quality, whereas cassette, it's, yeah. But
There's so many people doing that now, though. They're like setting it up in the middle of the room and just hitting record, which is kind of a cool idea, as like some little indie band. But where would I play that? I don't have a tape player.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do. I have a dual cassette tape player sitting right.
Go. Okay.
My dad bought a property, and there was a dual cassette tape player that was left there. And he's like, "Hey, I don't have a need for this. Do you want it?" And I'm like, "Sure." And so it's just sitting over here collecting dust. And when I want to break it out, I'll clean it off. And
there you go. Well, when tapes come back, you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's awesome. And then as far as shows and stuff like that, are you actively playing? Like, I know you had a show a couple days ago, or not too long ago. But how often are you playing live shows right now?
As much as I can. So I stay pretty busy. I think the next week I keep all my tour dates updated on my website. So townsendtmusic.com. But yeah, I stay busy. I play at least a few shows a week. Like I said, do my podcast every Monday. So it keeps me busy for sure. But yeah, I'm just keeping my fingers crossed, hoping that everything stays clear and germs steer clear for the musicians and that we can keep going the way we're going.
Yeah, it's been a good several months, I will say. Like, my buddy's band just booked a tour for June. Whoops, I wasn't supposed to say that, but I didn't say what band. So
yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. So they just booked out a tour for June.
Cool.
And it's looking good, so I'm really excited for that. Yeah. But we'll kind of see it. Like it happened last year where right around March.
Yeah, it just is what it is. I mean, you kind of got to ride the waves as they come. So
Yep. But outside of music, let's take a break from music. Well, when you need some alone time to get away from everything and decompress from day-to-day life, what are some of your hobbies? What do you do just to kind of get away?
I ironically got asked this the other day and I was like, and my friends very politely told me, you need to get a hobby. Because it's really easy. I bet you know this, to be, again, I keep throwing this term around, but to be an indie artist and have all these things going, you're wearing all your hats. So if I'm not on here podcasting, I'm recording. If I'm not recording, I'm writing. If I'm not writing, I'm packaging merch. If I'm not doing that, I'm designing. And so it gets really easy to do music 24/7. And I love it. So I also, it's like my passion. So I just get stuck in this cycle. But
at some point, you got to make sure you don't burn yourself out, which is a lesson I learned very well during the pandemic.
Yeah. So that's what I got to be careful doing. But things that I enjoy, since I've been doing music nonstop, I haven't gotten to enjoy them as much. But I love kayaking. I love anything Mother Nature. I will say I have a dog that keeps me active. If she doesn't go outside a few times a day, then she's jumping out the window. So she gets me out in nature for sure. I love reading. I love learning, anything learning. So I'm all about that.
Awesome. Yeah. That was something that I had to do. I was just like, because during the beginning of the pandemic, I was doing 20 some odd podcasts a week. Like I was going insane because it was one of those deals. I was working from home. I knew I had to be on the clock by 10 a.m. and I could be off by 6 p.m. So it's like, okay, I could do a podcast in the morning with all our UK musicians that we work with. And then I can do one after I get off work. And then I can do one later that night with all the musicians that are out in like Australia and all that stuff. And for like a solid month and a half, I did 2 to 3 podcasts a day, every day of the week.
Wow. That's too much.
My voice, like my sound engineer called me because he started listening to some of this stuff. He's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm podcasting, man. What are you talking about? He's like, have you listened to yesterday's episode or whatever it was? I was like, no, I just edited, put it up and kept it going. He's like, it sounds like you've been chain smoking nonstop for the last 20 years. You need to stop.
Wow.
And I'm like, Okay.
You're like, whoops, my bad, my bad.
All right. And then I just kind of stopped doing that. So
Yeah. Your body has a really good way of stopping you when you don't want to. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I felt indestructible though. It was just one of those things where it's like, keep going.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan does it every day of the week. He does
exactly.
So, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, it's really important to have something to kind of take a step back and, so.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in, just like you said, grinding for sure. But yes, self-care is something that I preach hardcore on my podcast and my You're Not Alone project, but it's easier said than done. But I try very hard to stay on myself as much as I do everybody else, just doing something that you love, something you enjoy. So,
I'm my own worst enemy in that regards too. It's like you speak all this stuff like, hey, you should be doing this. And then you look at yourself and it's like, oh, I'm not doing this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I keep seeing memes pop up and it's like, it's somebody on one side just bawling in a robe and a hair towel and just like life's falling apart, but they're on the phone, like cheering on their friend, giving them life advice while their life is falling apart. Yeah. We're pretty good at doing that.
Yeah. It's interesting. But let's talk before we kind of start wrapping this up. Let's talk a little bit more about the podcast because, like I mentioned earlier, I'm a huge fan of the concept of pushing mental health. How long have you been working on the podcast?
A little bit over a year. And so I started, let's see, the very first one I did was at the very end of 2019. I did one, and then I really started doing them in 2020. Just kind of like one a month here and there. And then it got to pick up more and more traction. And so, about the middle of 2020. And so into 2021. So yeah, going on about a year and a half.
Gotcha. And you release them weekly now? You're up to once a week now?
Yep. So it's kind of a weird process. It's a little bit different than what other people do, but I like the way I do it. So I do a live stream on Instagram so people can get on and chit chat live, ask questions, and then I convert that into a podcast and a YouTube video for my channel. And so the live streams are twice a month, and then I edit everything. And there's so many that I release a podcast once a week. So every Monday, a new podcast comes out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I thought about at one point moving this podcast, instead of streaming it on Facebook, moving it over to Instagram Live. And the first guest I was going to do it with wasn't really, because we work with musicians that are from 14 to, a lot older in their career, and they're not as social media savvy. And so trying to explain to them, for this Instagram Live thing to work, you got to log on to Instagram, you got to join my feed, and then I got to invite you, like all this weirdness. And trying to explain that to him, I was just like, I'm good. I'm going to keep it on Facebook, but I have been exploring the idea of there's a new other platform out there, outside of Zoom, called StreamYard. And you could stream to 3 different places, and I'm kind of intrigued by that idea of being able to stream to Twitch, because like I'm really trying to get into Twitch right now and because there's like a whole musician community over there. It just needs to get tapped at some point. So
I've looked into that for sure, but everything costs money and it just gets more and more. And so I looked at StreamYard for a minute, but didn't hop on board. And then I did Twitch for a little bit, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was one thing I had to do self-care, because I was in a music group and we talked about the new apps and things that you want to be into. And I literally at one time had like 20 apps. And you could spend 24 hours a day and still be behind on posting and keeping up. And so I literally had to sit down and say, okay, which ones do I want to invest my time in? And Twitch didn't make the cut. I mean, it could drive you nuts.
Yeah. Well, for me, I look at stuff that it takes the least amount of my time.
Yes.
In general, and just looking at Twitch is, if I want to put up every day an hour-long video, it's literally just an hour. Like I sit there, turn my computer on, it's an hour, and I keep it moving. Whereas if I do something like that for YouTube, it's not always that simple. It's just, yeah. So that's kind of what's interesting about Twitch. And then like you mentioned, I have that same issue of I'm trying to stay relevant on so many different apps that it's like at some point something's got to give. Luckily, Twitter, I don't really care about Twitter, so Twitter just kind of gets the pass for now. And it's Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah. That's what there were so many that were trying to come around and just can't do it. So for my own mental health and my own self-care, I did have to sit down and be like, okay, this is getting, I'm losing sleep. And because my mind doesn't turn off when the lights do, you know, so I'm thinking, oh, I could have done this and that and that. So
that's another thing I had to train myself. Like when I need to sleep, I need to turn my brain off and just like forget about everything else, because there'd be several different instances where as I'm getting ready to go to bed, I'll have an idea.
Yeah.
And then I'll write it down so I don't forget. And then all night I'm just flipping and turning and I'm like, well, what if we did this? Well, what if we did this? What if I did it like this? And it's just like nowadays it's like, okay, it's there. I'm not going to forget about it. I'm going to go to bed.
Yeah. You may have to teach me your ways. Teach me your ways.
Man,
when I'm excited about something, I go to bed and I'm like, oh, but I could work on it now. But I could do it now. Yeah. But wait, it's ridiculous.
I don't even know how I do it. It's a mindset thing. And where it's just like, I'm tired, I'm going to bed. Like that's what it is. So, but, no, that's kind of how it is. But one thing that two things that we do on the podcast, I'm going to stop saying one thing. Two things that we do on the podcast is one's a little bit more serious and one's a little bit more fun. So which way do you want to go? Do you want to end it on a fun note or a serious note?
Let's end it on a fun note.
Okay, perfect. So serious note.
All right.
One thing that we like to do on the podcast is we like to pass on knowledge to young musicians that are just getting started or want to take that next step in their career. You know, they're looking for a little bit of advice. So from your years of playing music and everything that you've learned, what's a piece of advice or a series of advice that you have for that young musician that's getting ready to take that next step, or maybe a lesson that you've learned that would be suitable for somebody in their early stages of their career?
Something I learned early on, and it continues to show up, is that talent doesn't get you as far as dependability does. And so it doesn't matter if you're the most talented person in the room, if you're not dependable and you don't have a good head on your shoulders, you're not going to make it.
That is very, very true.
Very true.
And I think just across life in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being dependable.
It's easy to feel judged and like, oh, they're better than me, but don't feel that way. Because if you've got a good head on your shoulders and dependable, you'll make it a lot further.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's one thing that we like to do. We want to make sure that the younger generation has some advice to turn to. They could always come to this podcast and know we're going to ask that question. And, you know, we want to make sure that there's a next generation of musicians.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome. That's a good idea.
Yeah. But fun little note before we leave. One thing that we do with every musician is I have a random question generator. Oh, gosh. Okay. So if you are ready, I've spun the wheel. All right, let's do it. And this is an amazing question. If you're ready. I'm ready. Let's go. Okay. If your personality was an alcoholic beverage, what would it be? Oh, easy. Bourbon. Because it's cool. Okay. But it's still got a kick to it. It's a little spicy, but it's still cool under pressure. Nice. what kind of... I totally made that up on the fly. That works. It made perfect sense, though. Made perfect sense. I dig it. I'm into bourbon, so I'm all about it. So yeah. But yeah. So that's just a little fun thing that we get. I love it. That's awesome. We get randomness on the that wheel. So it's always funny. Sometimes I have to respin because they get a little bit saucy. And it's
Yeah,
like,
you're like, let's not do. No, this is
yeah,
rated G. Let's not
yeah,
do that.
yeah.
I love it. That's awesome.
But once again, thank you so much for joining us. If anybody wants to check out your new music or any shows, or just kind of keep up with the podcast and all the stuff you got going on, where is the best place for them to do that?
Absolutely. So like I said earlier, I've got a website. It's townsendtmusic.com. You can find everything you need on there. And then like we said earlier, you can find me on social media, any of the platforms. It's just Townsend T Music. So look me up. I got my shows, all my new music. You can see my dog, of course. She's the most important. But yeah, hit me up. I'd love to chit chat.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate having the opportunity to sit here and chat with you. And I look forward to having you back on again whenever you have that next release that the teams are already asking about.
Stop pressuring me. I've already got enough. No, I'm kidding. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a blast.
Absolutely. Once again, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will catch you all later.
See ya.
Cool.